You hear a lot of commentary in the news about the unhoused, very rarely coming from the unhoused. And often the right wing is driving the conversation. People like Jesse Waters, the cast of The Five, who seems to utterly hate anyone who has been through a circumstance, twist of fate, cast into a situation that almost no one would want to be in. So I like when we actually get some information from people who are experiencing this, from which perhaps to draw our actual thoughts about this population, about what should be done, what should be changed. And so we've got this new study. This is specifically about people in California. It's people 18 and older experiencing homelessness in the state. Full background, we're broadcasting from Los Angeles, where there is a very large unhoused community. This study was led by the Benioff Homelessness and Housing Initiative at the University of California, San Francisco. And they found quite a bit that I found to be interesting, including how people ended up losing housing in the first place. And they found that in the 6 months prior to their homelessness, the median monthly household income of respondents was just $960. Leaseholders, that means people who had a rental lease or a mortgage, reported a median of just 10 days notice that they were gonna lose their housing. Non-leaseholders, referring to those living with friends or family, reported a median notice of just 1 day. And I found that to be one of the most important stats there, because I want you to imagine that you are renting or that you have a house and you find out you're going to lose that in 10 days. Now fix that situation. How do you go about doing that? Let alone if you're living with friends and family and you're told that the next day you need to be out. That is difficult. I don't know how many people could weather that situation and stabilize against all odds, especially when you're pulling in less than $1,000 in income in a particular month. And one of the most interesting financial stats that was shared in this study was how little additional money it would actually take for many of these individuals to have not lost their housing in the first place. They say that a monthly rental subsidy of just $300 to $500 would have prevented their homelessness for a sustained period. That was a majority of respondents. A one-time payment of $5,000 to $10,000 could have done it. 9 in 10 respondents believe the housing voucher would also have staved off their slide into homelessness. And so I don't know if the right wing or even a lot of centrist Democrats would consider that an acceptable price to pay. We know that they love to complain about the unhoused and complain about it as a problem, mostly for them rather than for the people who are currently experiencing it. But this is a reminder that solving that problem does not necessarily have to cost a lot of money, and preventative solutions can in many cases be way more cost effective than waiting for people to be in that situation and then trying to help lift them out of it. Gary, I know I've thrown a lot of that out there, but what do you think?
I think, when we look at where America is when it comes to this issue, no matter what part of the country you go into, homelessness is an issue, and we've got to have real concrete plans to address this issue. One of the things that I look at in the richest country on earth, if we could have money that we dug in the couch, I say all the time, and found PPP loan money for every business that had an issue, said that they lost something, then we definitely have the resources to address this issue. We've got hotels that have closed down, and we've seen cities go and turn into places that they can turn into housing for the unhoused. There are shopping malls, there are old school buildings in communities that are no longer being used, that get torn down. There are properties that are owned by government that could be put into cooperative endeavor agreements with public-private partnerships to help us take some of those resources. One of the things we can do, a lot of times we give these tax incentives to businesses. We can take some of those tax dollars that are brought in through maybe a tax abatement program or a tax incremental program where entities are not paying their full taxes back to the government. You expand that program and allow those tax dollars that would come back in and go into just a general fund, take that money and put it to a homelessness program with these facilities that you already have, so that one, you deal with blight, and two, you deal with making sure that money is going to address the issues that you have. Government often tells us this money's dedicated, we can't touch this. Well, there's money that we can get creative with every day. We find ways to get creative with it when we want to help businesses. We do not find ways to get creative with it when we want to help regular everyday people. And these are the people who hold up corporations, hold up businesses, make our country operate. And those are the people that we need to be concerned about. One of the things that really struck me about that was when they said a lot of these people are over 50, right? When you're looking at people that are going into an older age group where jobs may be limited for them in some capacity, and you're going into a lot of this technology advancement, these are people that we really need to be concerned about over the next 10, 15, 20 years, because this is gonna be a worse problem as people have struggled with retirement. When my grandmother passed away in 2001, her retirement check was $950 a month, right? That's what she got every month or her Social Security check was $950 a month. That's what she got every month to pay her bills. How do you survive on that?
Yeah, it's impossible in wide areas of the United States, I would imagine even then. Yeah, no, you're totally right. And when you talk about like diverting some of the money that goes to subsidizing businesses or whatever, we know that like business interests complain, especially in densely populated urban areas, about the unhoused. Well, okay, so maybe we can kill two birds with one stone. We actually help people, we do the compassionate thing, and it also makes you more comfortable operating your business or whatever. Lots of people complain about the presence of the unhoused in their neighborhoods. Well, what if we were to pay a little bit of money to stop it? Would that not be worth something? And I think that there are a lot of people who you throw this sort of plan in front of them would be perfectly happy to see that. I think that there is still a lot of empathy in America, but we also can't deny that there are some people, the people listening to like the Jesse Waters or whatever, that the solution they want, whether they will say it or not, is they want people carted into the desert, honestly. They're not looking to lift people up, get them back on their feet, help them be, like fully functioning members of society, stable, secure, all of that. They want the problem to disappear in a quite literal sense. That's my fear. I want to talk a little bit more about the demographics. You brought up the point that 44% of those surveyed were 50 or older. That's apparently fairly consistent with other studies that have been done. The number of people 55 and older who saw homelessness services increased significantly, more than any other age group. Compared to the overall California population, non-white groups were overrepresented amongst the homeless. 26% of participants identifying as Black, 12% as Native American or Indigenous, 35% as Latinx as their sole racial identity or one of their racial identities, 69% as cisgender men, 30% as cisgender women, 1% as non-binary, transgender, or gender non-conforming. Although there was a massive interaction with age there, 6% of the participants in the lowest age group, 18 to 24, were either non-binary, transgender, or gender non-conforming, which is very important to bear in mind. Now, for the actual experience of people living unhoused, not surprising, very rough in a number of different ways. 1 in 4 reported an inability to access prescription medications. Nearly half reported their overall health as poor or fair. Bear in mind, it's not too long ago that we have to remember how absolutely devastating the pandemic was for people who are unhoused. Forced to congregate, not having shelter, not being able to get personal protective equipment and all that in the ways that some other people were, not prioritized for vaccines and treatments, not having access to healthcare in a lot of cases and being stigmatized in a million different ways. A lot of people in the unhoused community died as a result of these conditions. Nearly 2/3 in this poll had at least one chronic health condition, which also, by the way, might have been a causal factor in losing housing in the first place. Almost half reported symptoms of depression or anxiety. 12% reported experiencing hallucinations. 1 in 3 have spent at least one night in jail during their current episode of homelessness, and many reported like pervasive contact with police. Again, not surprising in this case. 1 in 3 said that they've lost belongings to confiscations in the prior 6 months, including personal important documentation and medication. Medication that's already difficult to get or afford in the first place, being confiscated. Imagine you're already having enough trouble getting back on your feet and losing the important documents you need to qualify for different programs, to get a job, to get housing, all of that. That being confiscated too is absolute insult to injury. Gary?
I think when you look at what people are facing in these conditions, it should make us ask ourselves deep questions about who we are as a nation. But furthermore, just ask yourself, if you live in a city that has this issue, who are you as a city? What's your neighborhood? What is your local community? Don't make this such a big issue that it's not personal, because you do have the ability to make an impact within your community, and talk to the powers that be that are there and offer up solutions. A lot of times we think the people that we elect are very smart people. Newsflash, they're not the brightest people. They're not always the people with the answers, but they can listen to people with answers. And we should get engaged around these issues. There's a host of people that are engaged around these issues, but if it's impacting your local community, if you're a small business owner, call your city council member, call your state representative, get engaged with these people so that they can begin to address these issues in real time and not in a passive way where they just get to get on TV and talk about it and complain. We know the problem. What you gonna do about it?
100%. And the researchers in this particular study, they do have suggestions. We'll end with that. They say that California should increase access to housing for those with extremely low incomes by boosting production. Needing to boost production in housing is just an absolute constant issue for California. Expanding rental subsidies, bolstering housing navigation services, enforcing anti-discrimination laws. To support those dealing with mental health and substance use issues, the researchers recommend expanding low barrier treatment options for those experiencing homelessness and for those who transition into permanent supportive housing. I would also throw out there, like, to whatever extent that we as individuals can, like, there has been such a long-standing need to work against the stigmatization and demonization of people who are unhoused. Like that's not gonna solve the problem by itself, but we are seeing this renewed effort to scapegoat the unhoused as not just those who have suffered the most by the system, but the cause of suffering in the system. And I absolutely hate to see it. That's why we return to that topic so often. So to whatever extent, just bear that in mind when you're listening to conversations and all that. We can fight back against this. We can conceptualize and communicate about these people who are suffering so greatly in a very different way. Any final thoughts, Gary, before we move on?
Be a good neighbor, talk to people and stay engaged on the issue. Don't just drive by people, smile at people sometimes too. You never know how much a smile will make a difference in someone's life.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.